And we are live. Let's play some audio here and give folks a moment to join the chat.
Our requirements are simple. That you watch the following video.
We uploaded some music yesterday to YouTube.
All of the associated music.
Some of it may not be available anyplace else. It's hard to keep track when you have hundreds of tracks coming out.
There will be repercussions. You have been warned.
This one's called Figurine 2010. And we queued up a bunch of tracks. By the way, if you want to check this one out, yesterday we made a solar filter. It'll be the first solar filter that we've ever put up a YouTube video with. If you want the plans for the homemade solar filter, just send us an email at smAsho@gmail.com. Welcome, commenter. What was that? War? Okay, Harry Wire. War. Cheers. So we're looking at the sun just today in 193 angstroms. Relevant features are a series of coronal holes. Good, Harry. How are you? And sunspot 2736 setting. I don't know what that means. All right. Oh, you like this one? Yeah, you know, this is a song that I used for one of my gaming videos. I'll have to feature that sometime because it shows me really owning up one of those maps. All right, let's go back to the sun today while we take our time. As we don't want to get through this too quickly today, as there's a lot of stuff to cover. Glad you like the music, Harry. Oh, just advertising other music on our channel. Well done. Let's check the magnetic lines here, see if they've been updated. Welcome, Gray Horse. We are still looking at old data here on the magnetic line, so we'll ignore that. How about if we look at 171 angstroms here? Actually, let's look at 304. Check the filamentary activity. By the way, there have been more coronal mass ejections since the 20th. We'll get into it. So just bear with me a minute. Gonna let the 304 angstroms view play. That is 48 hours of solar activity, complete with date stamps. You want me to do a rendition of somebody else's track? That's possible. I'm thinking about doing some Street Fighter 2 music. Vega's theme and Guile's theme. Whoops. So we have seen some plasma ejected from the sun recently, and we're going to get there momentarily, but we got about 23 tabs open, so let's move on to the magnetogram. Look at the colored magnetogram real quick. All right, now that is a plage. And we are back to 0 sunspots. Regular viewers are surely aware that we only count sunspots when they're visible from Earth. And we'll just leave that there for now. By the way, if you like social media, Minds.com is a social media that will not track you. It will not use itself to spy on you. It's also open source, which means they'll show you the program code, unlike Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Instagram, Twitter. So check us out at minds.com/smashomash. Occasionally we put up things there that are not on the YouTube page. Things like GIF animations and, since Facebook still doesn't know how to display a GIF animation correctly. And we've been trying to upload most of our videos fully onto Minds. Let me see if I can find one of my GIF animations for you. Probably go to images. We don't spend that much time on this site because it's only got about 250,000 active users. But let me see if I can find my images. Where are they? I don't know where they are, folks. All right, we got an ad plan. Yeah.
We have noticed a difference in our winter wheat yields.
Please skip that. Check this out. This guy's talking about his winter wheat yields.
Prosaro on one field, we sprayed half and half, and it was about a 5 bushel difference from one half of the field to the other half. So yes, we have noticed a difference in a yield difference with Prosaro compared to other brands.
Now that's an ad for some kind of Bayer product. He was talking about reduced wheat yields. So if you're not familiar with global crop losses, folks, I suggest you familiarize yourself with global crop losses. Because there are lots. Now this is a little dangerous scrolling through here, but see, occasionally we do stuff like put up GIF animations of the sun. That's probably Sunspot 2733, I want to say, based on the fact that it's about a month old. So that's something we do on there that you may not otherwise see. Here's one that has the magnetic lines. Here's a coronal mass ejection. So you may not get a Christmas card like this if you don't subscribe. All right, enough advertising for Minds. Let's look at spaceweathernews.com. And I'll check the chat as it loads. We do still see some flares coming out of that sunspot, but that's going to subside today. There's not a lot of activity on the solar disk. Now, last night, we saw this spike in the solar wind density right there. That was the CME arriving. It lasted almost exactly as long as we anticipated, about 2 hours. And now it has dropped right back down to baseline levels. We do see an uptick in the solar wind speed. And we did see a moment here where we see some coronal hole magnetic connections, it looks like. Right there, and probably there too, and probably there. Actually, that middle arrow is probably wrong. That's associated with the CME there. But that arrow there, that's most assuredly a coronal hole connection, because again, we have that system of coronal holes near the solar south pole. And we won't be expecting wind from that for another couple of days, about 48 hours probably. Now we see some steepness in the magnetometer here. That's also associated with the coronal mass ejection hit. And we were completely wrong about geomagnetic storms. We only got up to a KP of 2. And we expect to see that drop. There's a dip in the electron flux. Keep in mind the solar wind is typically made about 80 to 85% out of protons, hydrogen nuclei, which have a very, very, very high electron affinity. And so we're expecting to see the electron flux head back to normal levels here. Although we are looking at that solar wind increasing. So we're not really seeing a coronal hole wind stream hitting yet. And there's the F2 ionosphere layer. The current solar wind speed is more just like a baseline. And there are your, there's the current solar cycle. There's your relativistic electron flux and daily solar wind. There's your solar cycles. Note how small cycle 24 was, or should I say is. I'm not trying to confuse you there. The solar cycles overlap, and it takes months to figure out which cycle you're in. You have no choice but to wait until you start to see reverse polarity sunspots and no old cycle polarity sunspots. And we are also watching the solar polar north field closely as it is gaining strength. And in fact, while I'm talking about that, we've got some footage of the sun here. Let's look at solen.info. Let's see if it'll fulfill it for me. Here is Blacksmith. Excellent. It's another sun resource site here. This site is going to have some information that other sites will not have. And I'm looking for something in particular here, folks. I think it is solar polar fields. This is the real way to predict solar cycles. And I just want to note the blue line, which is the polar field north, is rising as of, what's the date there? That's all the way back in July. Solen.info, please update this, as we are very interested in what this has done for the past 8 months. Anyway, we're putting this up here because of the way the solar polar fields flip. And regular viewers are probably aware at the last solar polar field flip didn't really do it normally. The north polar field didn't flip. But now that it's gaining in strength, this is part of the reason why we don't expect a weaker cycle 25. Now, it's anybody's guess, because magnetic stuff changes with absolutely no warning. Speaking of which, let's go to the gong 2. Now, I did call for a magnetometer spike there, and it was associated with these lines. Not those lines, these lines. See that bulge? It looks like a bulge in the field lines. That equates to stronger fields at the Earth. So what we're looking at here is the top view ecliptic plane field plot. And out here we've got stereo A for ahead and stereo B for behind. And for beginning viewers, just note that the Earth goes around the sun this way, like all the other planets. So these satellites are ahead and behind, not in terms of their location, but in terms of when they experience space weather. So the reason we call this side of the sun the east and this side the west is because sunspots rise on this side and they set on this side. Got it? All right. So anyway, that's what's going on with the Gong 2. And the way this is measured is with a lot of ground-based magnetometers as well as stereo A and stereo B's magnetometers. Get that drawing brush out of here. Draw on Screen, by the way, a great app. A great free app from somewhere. I don't know where. It's just literally just called Draw on Screen. Next, we got your geospace magnetosphere movies. Let's go backwards. First, we've got the pressure. And you can see this has dropped down since last night. No real surprise there, right? As the solar wind density dropped off. And we see a little bit greater pressure in the magnetotail there during part of the movie. And then back to a higher velocity solar wind here. So let's look at the pressure. Much lower, the density, much lower than last night, obviously. As we got all the way up to something like 34 protons per cubic centimeter during the CME hit. But it wasn't a very hard hit, and it wasn't very long lasting. So I was surprised that it didn't get up to a KP4. I would have still predicted a KP4 with that high of a density, but it didn't happen. Here's the velocity. Nothing too unexpected going on there. And YouTube keeps playing the same commercials. Hopefully this is gaining more revenue because we need it. Let's look at the geospace ground magnetic perturbations. As Stacker Do plays in the background. By the way, these are all YouTube videos. So check them out if you like the music. We're occasionally putting up full volume music videos here. They're not heavily produced, but hey, I don't even have an agent yet, so. By the way, if you're a A&R out there, send us an email at smAshomash@gmail.com. We've got a lot of skill, talent, and training to sell for very, very high costs. All right, and here we've got the global geospace magnetic perturbations. Keep in mind, this is changes in the B field. And for those of you studying magnetohydrodynamics, you're aware the B field is the one that goes through a magnet. And for instance, the BTBZ is a measurement of the sun's B field. The sun's B field also happens to be the interplanetary magnetic field. So not a lot of perturbations going on here, although we do see our standard 2 poles in the north and 1 pole in the south. So we've got, there's a pole here, there's a pole here, and there's a pole here. This one's clearly heading this way. And we are interested in watching the rest. Part of the reason we look at this every day is because we want to see any sudden changes. All right, let's move on to solarham.net as we saw some coronal mass ejections, and we want to show you they do not appear to be Earth-facing. Here's the LASCO chronographs. Let me zoom out far enough so we can see the date stamps. So we see there's a coronal mass ejection yesterday. It looks like it's going to miss the Earth to the east. Most likely coming out of sunspot 2736, as you would expect. It's a pretty decent coronal mass ejection there, pretty long-lived. And here it is on the C3, a little zoomed out. A little zoomed out as we're a little spaced out. Making videos at before 4 o'clock in the morning, folks. You know why? Because nobody else in the world is making videos like these. So if you want videos like this, you better subscribe because you're not going to find them anywhere else. So anyway, there was a coronal mass ejection there. There was ejecta coming out on the 21st, on the 22nd. On the 23rd. And then a larger one on the 24th. All right, let me go to the next tab here. Oh, wait, actually. Let's go to Solar Ham one moment. So you have another source for information. So head to solarham.net. Check this out yourself if you like. The synoptic map. This one done by Lash. I have no idea who that is. And every day you'll see this synoptic map. Give you a little bit better idea of what's going on, perhaps if you're seeing features that you don't understand. So there's a lot of sites analyzing this, but there aren't any pages making video. There are no YouTube videos coming out as in-depth as ours. So check out Solar Ham. It's a good site. Also check out spaceweather.com, the site where I initially started following the sun in about 2003. At least that was, besides things like astronomy classes and physics classes. Let's see here. So, now the sunspot number, they're showing a sunspot number of 14. That's going to come down to 0 today. And take a look at the thermosphere climate index here. I'm not sure how updated this is. Oh, not updated at all. All right. Just keep in mind, not as low as it was at the beginning of 2010. And the 10.7 centimeter radio flux is at 75. I can't remember what the update was on that. At least it's above forecast. As you can see, that red line is the projected 10.7 centimeter radio flux, predicted value, and we are well above that, closer to 80. And that's a good sign. Look at the total electron content here, as it should be pretty low. From between low and baseline, really. There's your total electron content. And this is used to predict things like GPS errors, as the GPS satellite has to send data through all of those electrons. So a little less GPS errors than the previous few days in North America, although some. And there's today, the last half of that, the last third, I'll say, is today. And now I've got me talking in the background while I'm talking in the foreground. So I'll just try to talk louder and drown myself out. I don't like the sound of my voice that much. Really, as a singer, I don't really like the sound of my voice at all, but people tell me I'm okay. So I might as well play the X-ray imager. We're going to play some music for you. Full volume. There's the X-ray imager. I'll let that play for a moment while I read comments. By the way, thanks everybody for commenting. Can I explain how it has an effect on pain sufferers? I'm going to have to save that for another video. Can they use HAARP to enforce the Earth's magnetic field, or maybe CERN? I don't think so. CERN has nothing to do with any of this. CERN's magnetic fields are to contain their atom smashing. And, you know, HAARP can absolutely heat up the atmosphere, and HAARP can absolutely change things like cloud nucleation. As far as the effects on the ionosphere, not really that big. It will cause an effect, but it's not going to cause an effect like a nuclear weapon would. Effects from nuclear weapons in the ionosphere affect the planet for weeks and months at a time because of the electron flux. Sully's Girl 89, where are you located? You said you have electrical damage in your neighborhood. Where are you located? Because that's surprising. I don't think that's caused by the coronal mass ejection, considering we only got a KP at 2. The pole was concrete. Wire was good 4 foot from pole, bracket no damage. Yeah, the stuff wears out, you know. Electrical equipment corrodes over time. Yeah, CERN doesn't bend the shield, and you can't see it because you can't see magnetic fields. And if CERN was bending the shield, guess what would happen? You'd be able to detect it with a magnetometer, but you can't. Go to Switzerland, bring a magnetometer, stand outside of CERN while it's running. You won't detect it. Seriously, folks, before you conjecture about CERN affecting the magnetosphere, you need to understand the physics behind it. Because that's not the way magnetic fields work. No to all this. No, this all new equipment, Gulf Coast. Oh, all right. Well, who knows? Maybe lightning struck someplace down the line and that blew it out. That's got nothing to do with the coronal mass ejection. If you wanted to help protect the Earth, could you reinforce the Earth's magnetic field? Well, that's an interesting question. Probably not. But what you could do is you could block coronal mass ejections by putting a field in between the sun and the Earth. So if you put an object out there known as a Dobbs object, DOBBS object, to emit a magnetic field, you may be able to deflect incoming solar plasma. This is a known thing. I believe Anton Petrov has a video about that if you want to check that out. What you can't do is have enough power to do anything significant to the Earth's magnetic field. It requires too much magnetic strength because, put it this way, do you think you can build a magnet nearly as strong as the sun? Because the interplanetary magnetic field is what we're talking about here, in my opinion. So forget that nonsense. It's probably weird timing. All right, what else do we have on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard? We are good to go. Actually, let's look at the Enlil forecast as it's changed. Spaceweather.com, by the way, is saying, we may experience some turbulence in the wake of the coronal mass ejection, but the turbulence that we're going to see in the solar wind is from more ejecta. So we're going to see spikes in the solar wind density that are not reflected on this. I already see the small halos coming out. So when you see a bunch of density spikes in the solar wind in the next day or 2 or 3, that is what they're from. And we're also going to continue to see some magnetometer spikes. So, I mean, earthquake risk is now very high because that coronal mass ejection is essentially over. So we're going to be switching off between a sputtering connection between a bunch of incoming plasma and coronal holes. Here's your latest earthquakes. Oh, it looks like Mexico just got hit. Let's just scroll down the list here. We don't want to spend all day. Nicaragua, a deep quake there. Let me draw in the warning zones. I think it's possible. I'm not going to talk about how I hate the map. All right, so massive earthquake drought for 6 and 7 magnitude earthquakes. If you're in these regions, please have a plan. In the event of a disaster, please try to be an asset, not a liability. As we see a bunch of deep quakes, and the 6 and 7 earthquake drought continues. So we are not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out where they're going to be. But if you're in those areas, be aware. Because being aware is in itself preparation if you can't afford to do anything else. All right, so 5.3 Nicaragua, 4.7 Indonesia, right in the warning zone. 4.3 in California, that's the biggest one they've seen off the coast there, and we have seen some activity out there. At least it's not at depth. There's a 5.1 in Mexico, right at the northern tip of the South American watch zone. There's another one at depth at Chile. So another warning of larger quakes at the surface. 4.3 in Mexico, off the coast of Baja there. 4.5 in Nicaragua, also at depth. So that would be the hot spot, I would say. Nicaragua. Heads up, Nicaragua. 4.4 in Chile, also at depth. So significant deep quakes going on. All right, what else? Here's a 4.5 in Indonesia, right in the watch zone. Here's a 4.6 in Philippines, right in the watch zone. 4.8 in Indonesia, at the western tip of the watch zone. And that's your earthquakes. Heads up. I mean, serious earthquake drought, 6 and 7 magnitude earthquake drought, massive drought. And we're seeing the weakest solar wind we've seen ever on our channel. Last night it was down to something like 260 kilometers per second. Extremely low velocity. Let's look at volcanoes. We've got Kamchatka producing a 12,000-foot plume, Abiko producing a 5,000-foot plume. Don't jump your go-kart over that. Sakurajima producing a 6,000-foot plume. Mount Ibu back on the list with an 11,000-foot volcanic ash plume there. Krakatau back to erupting. That's a scary one, as it has created new real estate. Bromo, explosive activity continuing with a 10,000-foot ash plume there. Dacona with a 7,000-foot plume there. Fuego, Sabancaya, 25,000-foot plume there. Planchon Petaroa, volcanic ash not identifiable. So it's a bit of a volcanic uptick there. Let's move on to the Scope X. Racist University, Harvard, is conducting a project of geoengineering. So if you're against geoengineering, whether you're in the U.S., where your federal taxpayer dollars are going to this racist organization known as Harvard University, which, by the way, is going to get sued probably for hundreds of millions of dollars, because I can't imagine how many Asian lawyers were not able to get into Harvard Law School thanks to your racist policies, Harvard. So Harvard, racist policies, federal funding, and performing geoengineering experiments. Please let your local congressman know what you think of this moronic idea based on a false premise that carbon dioxide is warming the planet. Let's check out CNN.com, the Communist News Network. Trump's presidency enters a new era. Oh, yeah, that's right. You know why? I guess the Mueller investigation is finally over. I wonder how much it cost. How much did it cost you, folks? $50 million? $100 million? A complete political scam? Let's scroll down and not click on any of these articles. Health worries after a bunch of benzene burns up in Texas. I can't imagine why benzene could be a problem. That's not a carcinogen or anything. I thought I saw something else I wanted to mention here, but who really cares? Rigged, fake news, rigged, witch hunt. Let's look at AccuWeather.com for a value-added service for our U.S. viewers. Sorry, international viewers, we can't look at every Doppler radar in the world. All right, we got some heavy storms. Let's see, what's the latest here? 350, all right. We got a line, a crazy convergence line there, all the way from Texas up to Ohio. You got some snow and wintry mix in Montana. Looks like the Bay Area, San Francisco is getting one of these stagnant storms that's just kind of hanging around. And a little rain in northern PA. Let me show you a great site, by the way. Next time you hear lightning, go to lightningmaps.org. Fantastic site where you will actually see the lightning on the map before you hear it. It's fantastic. So if there's anybody in these areas, tune in, go to your location. You can even use location services, by the way. Great service. And it does increase your safety a little bit. You can even turn on sound where you'll hear the lightning bolts coming in. We won't do that because it's annoying when you're making a video. All right, so let's look at the NASA GOES water vapor map here. Good night, Mr. Waya. Turn up the quality to 100. How come I only got 10 images? That's not what we want. We want 50 images. Oh, there we go. Okay. And there's your water vapor map. Give you a better idea of what's going on in the upper atmosphere. We've got dry air in the central U.S. is pretty much what's in control of that convergence line. That's what's causing a massive pressure gradient over Texas, Arkansas, and heads up Tennessee and Kentucky. It's headed your way. Although most of the storm is going to move to the east, so Mississippi's next, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. Remember, when you're looking at this map, the dry air represented in colors like yellow and orange and red. Dry air is more massive than wet air and usually colder. And in terms of atmospheric physics, the dry air is kind of in control of things. Which brings me to the next tab. Jupiter's Great Red Spot. Actually, we're going to hold that off for a minute. We're going to look at the GFS model of the 250 millibar winds here at Tropical Tidbits. I'm going to switch to a desktop site here because this isn't giving me the controls that I need. Some mobile sites are okay. Some mobile sites are unacceptable. This one is just okay. But Tropical Tidbits is a great site. Also, I would highly recommend installing the Windy app at windy.com. Great weather app. All right, so here's... It's 18 Zulu. Okay, so we're right around this area right here. This is the current situation. And for those of you trying to predict earthquakes, you want to look for anomalous low pressure systems doing strange things at the plate boundaries. So Nicaragua, for instance, if Nicaragua sees a low pressure system that's moving, for instance, east to west instead of west to east, that would be a risk factor for earthquakes, especially considering we've seen 2 deep ones. All right, let me get to the comments here after I go to the next tab, which is the Zooniverse.org Galaxy Zoo project. Zooniverse.org is the largest citizen science project in the world, and we need humans to classify galaxies. So set yourself a login here. You might get published in an astronomy paper, and we'll classify a galaxy before your very eyes. Oh, look at this one. This is a weird one. It's very distorted. Nice. Features. Hey, my facts don't care about your feelings. It must be Stefan Molyneux or Ben Shapiro or somebody. All right, so is it an edge on disk? Well, it's certainly not an edge on disk. Is there a bar? Is there a bar? I'm going to say, I think there is a bar. We'll just say weak bar. Is there any sign of a spiral arm pattern? I think I see one spiral arm there. How about you? Ah, yes, it does matter. All right, we're going to say medium wound. A bit of an odd galaxy here. I only see one spiral arm, so we're going to say one spiral arm. Is there a bulge? There is a bulge. We'll say small. By the way, this is the That's What She Said section when we talk about bulges. Is it merging or disturbed? It is disturbed. Let's say minor. And we've got a bunch of features. We're going to say a ring. We're going to say irregular and a dust lane. I'll look again to see if I see any overlap. And this orange object right here is close enough to be not galactically. Well, yeah, galactically. Close enough to be gravitationally bound. Take that however you like. But it's most like, well, it could be involved with that merger too. Anyway, it's a weird shaped galaxy. And let's just say overlap and something else. And there you go. Another galaxy classified. Last I checked, there's about 7 million to go. So check it out at zooniverse.org if you're interested in classifying galaxies, since computers can't do it. Jupiter's Great Red Spot is shrinking. Now, keep in mind, this is associated with the Sun. The Great Red Spot is an anticyclone, and this is associated with positive charge. Yes, that's right, positive charge. This is not a storm as you would think of a storm. A storm on the Earth is a low-pressure system, where you would see a bulge. This is not a bulge. This is a depression, because this is a pushing on the planet. This is pushing into the planet, not bulging out. So that's essentially a great red hole. And it's the same kind of thing you would see on the Earth. In an anticyclone, it's the dry spot where you have high pressure and high winds. So anyway, this article from cosmosmagazine.com, you can't miss it. I don't think they have any idea what the physics are. Let me just skim through and see if they do. See, they're calling it a massive storm, but it's not really a massive storm. It causes massive storms and it's massive winds, but again, it's an anticyclone, which means it's associated with positive charge, not negative charge, which means it's a high pressure zone, not a low pressure zone, which means it's not a storm in any stretch of the imagination as you would describe a storm on Earth, at least. It's not going to talk about solar activity. I just know it. Zonal jets. Yeah. In other words, Jupiter's probably getting an odd jet stream flow like the Earth is due to low solar activity. Anyway, read the article. You probably learned something about Jupiter you didn't know yet. Here's one from medicalexpress.com, which I found on, I think, phys.org. What's the title? Exercise adds up to big brain boosts. That's right. Exercise isn't just good for your body, it's good for your brain. And on a related note, if you're thinking about buying a bike, start your shopping at theveloshop.net. Now, I've been in the market for a cruiser for a long time, and here is a totally nice one. Oh, wow, look at that one. It's a women's. Felt Bixby. It's a single speed, super simple. If you live in a place that's flat, no shifting required. Very old school. Here's what I would get probably. If I had a beach house, I might just put that in the fleet. All right, let me get back to the chat here. All right, we got a lot of comments, and for that, we thank you. And there's Sunspot 2736, setting in 94 angstroms. We're going to be out of here in about 5 minutes, folks, so if you have any questions, comments, etc., now's the time. All right. Just bear with me. I'm reading the comments here. Sunspot 2736 looking like a fountain. I'm blasting the comment section with x-rays again. Well, let me just say something about tariffs, by the way, since we're talking about manufacturing. For every steel or aluminum manufacturing job in the U.S., there are 43 steel and aluminum utilizing jobs in the U.S. Tariffs are stupid. Tariffs are a tax on the consumer. They're not a punishment against the manufacturers. All they do is cause the price of the supply chain to increase, which in turn causes the price of everything you purchase to increase. Tariffs are dumb. They're economic controls that don't work. They're stupid. Peter Schiff would agree. Government, stay out of the economy. You have no business there. You do not know how to operate the economy. And I understand Trump uses the tariffs as a bargaining chip. That doesn't change the fact that there are tariffs in place and they are raising prices of things right now. And by the way, your food prices are going to go up. The U.S. lost 1/3 of its grain stores during those floods in the central U.S. 1/3 of its grain stores. So be prepared for the rising food prices. It is on the way. Can they protect the Earth with nanoparticles in the atmosphere, some kind of particulate shield to deflect around the Earth? No, they can't. There are not enough chemicals, planes, or time to do anything like that. It's a stupid, idiotic idea. Geoengineering. Dumb all the way through. Okay. I believe it was a thrill up his leg. I think you're talking about Chris Matthews there. When Obama spoke and was able to compose a coherent sentence, which was about 1 out of every 4,000 sentences Obama spoke, Chris Matthews would feel a thrill up his leg. What a journalist. Next 2 years will be interesting. 2020 alt left. I don't know what that means. The speed and number of promises they make to get elected is directly proportional to the velocity that they screw over the people who elected them. That's true. You got that. You got that right. Sully girl, you like the weather sites? All right, cheers. We appreciate your feedback. They have Trump right where he wants them. They will scream for transparency, and that's what Trump will give them, all the transparency he wants. All right, so in summary, folks, we got low solar activity. We're going to have some spikes in the solar wind density because there is still some ejecta headed toward the Earth, which we looked at in the last go C2 and C3. Earthquake risk is very high, and we're looking for coronal hole connections. We are seeing deep quakes jump off. So if you know people in these earthquake-prone areas, please let them know. The earthquake 6 and 7 magnitude drought is a crazy drought. We usually see, I believe it's 2 6 magnitude quakes per week, and we're getting more like 1 per month. Don't quote me on that. It's probably not exactly right. If you'd like to put a more in-depth breakdown of normal amount of earthquakes versus what we're getting now, please put it in the comments. We would appreciate it. You might get smarter sitting around the house. Depends on what you do while you're sitting around the house. I like this idea of walking backwards on the treadmill. I like that. I got another good one for you, too. Try running uphill backwards outside. Running uphill backwards is quite interesting, and it's part of the reason why Walter Payton kicked so much ass. Yes, sweetness. Number 34, Chicago Bears, Walter Payton. One of the best football players of all time. Oh, I guess you already knew about that. All right. Thank you for tuning in, Sully Girl and Chrissy Williams and Manuela and everybody else. Thanks for the comments. Was that a soybean deal, Sully's Girl? Let's put on a different view here. I'm trying to get through the comments, but you folks are so active that it's taken a while. Let's go back to 171 angstroms here. This is a better view. This is ionized iron, by the way. Oh, what a live comment section we have. Look at that. A nice sunspot X-ray fountain right over the comments. What more could you want? I wonder if I can click on that link. Nope. Geoengineering is BS because it's a stupid idea. We can manipulate the weather. However, we don't have enough chemicals currently produced to do it. It requires millions and millions and millions and millions of plane flights to make any significant difference. We don't have the appropriate aircraft infrastructure to do any sort of large-scale plan. Pilots that I know personally know that this is not going on any large scale. Bulgaria is firing rockets at hailstorms. China is burning chemicals on ground-based Tibetan plateau stations. And that does have an effect on the weather. Even a contrail has an effect on the weather because contrails cool the planet. They are pollution. They increase the Earth's albedo. We don't need to do any of this. We just had a stratospheric injection from volcano Bezimiani just a few days ago. And that's the way we get aerosols in the atmosphere. Putting them there ourselves is going to be irrelevant. And let me just state one more thing. The main greenhouse gas on the Earth is water vapor. I don't think the problem is with raw material in steel. The problem is with the electronics. For instance, the F-35 has Chinese electronics on it. I think that's probably more of a problem than the... Oh, yeah, well, you know, methane is totally overrated as a greenhouse gas because methane is not able to stay in the atmosphere very long at all because it reacts right away with oxygen. So anyway, let's zoom back out. Give you the full view here at 171 angstroms before I close things out. Thanks again, donors, subscribers. Please share on your social media and reduce our level of shadow ban. We will be staying tuned to this little object here, our local yellow dwarf. And if you need to get hold of us, please feel free to email at smashomash@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in. It'll never be now again. So may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins.